Hello, hello, hello. Good morning to my friends on the left coast, good afternoon to the East Coasters, and good evening to those who are listening from overseas. My name is DJ Waldo, and I will be your moderator for today's seminar. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute and thank Net Prospects for sponsoring today's broadcast. Net Prospects is a smarter B2B data partner, helping lead generation professionals increase revenue impact through database management. Thousands of B2B organizations rely on Net Prospects to acquire targeted prospects for marketing campaigns and sales pipelines. If you're on Twitter, and you are on Twitter, I assume, be sure to add the hashtag B2B that's hashtag B2B to your seminar-related tweets during or after this broadcast. All right, is everyone just about ready? Because today's seminar, B2B data so fresh and so clean, will be presented with our expert, Lauren Brubaker. Lauren Brubaker wears the demand generation and marketing operation hats at Net Prospects and has spent the last 8 years working as a B2B marketer specializing in the technology industry. She has extensive experience developing effective demand generation programs, complex lead scoring models, and increasing marketing efficiency by leveraging clean data to drive demand. We are very, very excited to have Lauren here to present today. So Lauren, let's go ahead and get started. You're up.
Thanks, DJ. I appreciate you giving me that introduction. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today to talk a little bit about cleaning out your database and getting it to that wonderful, fresh and clean status. Let's get right into it and talk a little bit about the agenda. The way this is going to work, we're going to split things up into a couple of different sections. So I will get into it by starting out with why are we talking about this webinar, and then we'll get into the meat. We'll talk about some very specific queries that you guys can run to find the junk data that sits inside your database. These are things that are all grouped together because you can do them all on your own. You don't need anybody else's help to find these contacts that would be considered bad data, so you can do them by yourself. Then we'll move into sort of behavior-based cleaning that you can do, where this may involve you working with your Salesforce administrator or the person who runs your marketing automation platform. You know, it's sort of the medium level of database cleansing. And then third, we'll talk about some advanced tactics that would require you to either work with a data vendor or maybe your IT department in order to achieve those objectives. And then we'll talk about maintenance and Q&A. If you are on Twitter, like DJ said, I'd love to connect with you guys using that hashtag. You can find me at B2B I'd love to connect with you guys as we're talking about this topic during today's webinar and just in general over the course of your data cleansing experience. So first up, why this webinar? Net Prospects earlier this year put out a report, 2013 State of B2B Marketing Data. We went through and analyzed over 100 million different contact records to figure out, okay, how healthy are these B2B marketing databases? You guys can see that link at the bottom. I think they'll post that as well. If you want to download the report and check out what it's all about and see really how it is that we went about analyzing these databases, you can do that there. But the bottom line of the report was we wanted to really figure out, what does B2B marketing data look like? What do these databases look like? And the results, they were not great. They found in the report over 60% of the companies had an overall health scale of unreliable. So they knew that the data that these companies were using was not something that sales and marketing was really going to be able to rely on for pipeline. Over 80% of the companies had risky phone connectability. So even if your programs were great, you had email addresses that were working, if you pass those leads over to sales, they were not going to be able to contact them. And then 25% of the overall B2B database is inaccurate. So that was really what was the driver of us starting this project, starting the benchmark report. We presented all of this in a webinar with Marketing Profs earlier this year, and one of the pieces of feedback that we got was we'd love to have some really specific steps about what we can do to clean out your database. So that's what we did, and now let's just chat a little bit about why you should care. So when doing all of these studies, we found that It costs $1 to verify a record as it's entered, but it's $10 per record to cleanse it and dedupe the record. And then if you do nothing, it's going to cost you $100. And I think that it's really important for marketers to understand. I think a lot of us think, oh, it's my database. If there's junk data that's in there, it's not going to do any harm. It's not going to be any sort of a problem. Well, the truth is that it is. If you're sending to junk email addresses, it could cost your deliverability reputation. If you have a marketing automation platform that charges you for storage, you have to pay to store these bad records. And then if you have pipeline, like you're counting on the amount of records that are in your database to fuel a specific percentage of your pipeline, that can cost you there as well. So it's really, really important and something that does cause actual harm if you don't pay attention to it. It's just like it says here, it's really imperative that everybody makes it a priority to do this sort of database cleansing, not just on a one-time basis, but ongoing and continuous. So we know it's a problem. We've all got it. Dirty data's there. So let's go ahead and clean it up. So moving into that first section that I mentioned to you guys, cleaning house. These are the areas, these are the topics that you guys can all do right away without any sort of help. And step one is really important. You need to establish your benchmarks. So go right now and figure out, where do we stand right now? Because one of the great things is that you will find dirty data, you will find bad records, and at the end of this project, you want to be able to say to your executives, to your team, hey, we did this and we figured out just how many bad records were in our system. We were able to discover X, Y, and Z, but you can't do that unless you establish your benchmarks. Second, query out the junk. We'll get into some specific queries that you guys can do per field, and I'll get into those next, and then we'll talk about what that means for your lead scoring and your lead handoff to sales. So this is the first scrub that we have listed up here. I've got a really specific query that you guys can do for first name or last name. Something that I want to emphasize as we go through this, I'm not going to talk about every single query, every single thing that's listed line by line here. I'm going to highlight some of the specific points, but one thing is you can take these types of queries and apply them to any field that's in your database. So just because this is on the first or last name slide doesn't mean that you're only limited to using them here. So we start out, you can see some of the basic stuff. So first name should not contain numbers. It should not contain symbols. You know, those are really, really easy wins that you can search to figure out if you have stuff in there. One thing that I do want to point out, first name contains .com is often an indicator that you have some sort of bot that is filling in the first name field with an email address instead. So if you find that you have a lot of .coms in your first name, you have a lot of email addresses that are in your first name column, you may want to figure out, where's that data coming from? Do we have bots that are going in and attacking our web forms? The other stuff I feel like is the middle sections are fairly self-explanatory, but down at the bottom, this is sort of where you can have some fun. First name contains Mickey Mouse, Superman, Batman. People get really creative with the fake information that they use to fill out their forms. And so that can be sort of fun. You can figure out what are the most unique names that are coming through that people are using to give you fake data. And then, okay, so this one is absolutely crucial. This listing that says here, first name contains left company are no longer there. This means that your sales department does not understand that the first name field is sacred. So it means they are putting notes in the first name column that do not belong there. It's a good indication that sales may not understand that the first name field is used for personalization in email addresses, and you've got to address it with them immediately. Because if they view that as a place to put notes for pronunciation or any kind of notes about the person, like what their real name is versus what they're called, that is just going to ruin things for your email marketing. So really, really important to address there. For the email address, we've got, things like it starts with admin, it starts with info, marketing, or sales, all that stuff, it's not really useful because it doesn't indicate that this is a specific person whose behavior we can study and we can figure out, what it is that they eventually want for conversion purposes. I've got some notes here at the bottom, end with UK, end with .ca. If you're a US-based company that only cares about marketing to US people, that may be something where you can figure out, okay, we've got some people in our database that they don't matter. For the title field, if your title is blank, if that is something that you really, really depend on, that may be where you want to figure out it either contains blank because the salesperson didn't know what the title was, or the title actually, that field is actually null. Those are two areas where you can figure out, okay, this is important. We know that we query off title all the time, or we group based on personas. If that's an important field, you want to pay a lot of attention to it. And then down here, I've got an example. Title contains product marketing. This is, we market to marketers all the time, but product marketing is not people that we typically they don't end up purchasing from us. So that's another area where you can sort of filter out, okay, these people don't belong. Company name, you've got competitors. You want to figure out who those people are if they're in your database. That's also a good one to do a search for with email address. You can figure out who are your named accounts and how many people per named account are in there. And then I've got an example down here at the bottom just highlighting the different ways that companies can be exhibited and is a great opportunity for normalization. So if you're trying to find, if you're doing a campaign for everybody that's at IBM, you want to know what's in my database. Do I have IBM? Do I have IBM Inc.? International Business Machines? If you have a bunch of different varieties and they're not all set up in your queries, you may miss out on targeting the right type of people. So that's just something to consider when you're thinking about company name. And then finally, the field-specific information, you've got direct phone. If your phone's blank or it's zeros or 123s, if you pass that lead over to sales and they're not able to contact them, it's just not going to be as valuable of a lead because they can't get them on the phone. And then you've got other instances of country and state where there's misspellings, there's different representations. These are all things that you may want to consider looking at, which you can use and sort of figure out and say, yeah, let's normalize all this. We know that state is really important for territories, and we know country is really important. Let's really dig in and look at that field. So then once you have all of those fields, and this is where you're starting to really get intimate with your data and you understand what's going on in your database, you can prioritize them based on your lead scoring model. This is the information that NetProspects uses. So when I pass a lead over to sales, this is the information that ideally I want to know in a perfect world. So we've got their revenue, their state. We can split them out according to the right rep at the right time. And you can prioritize your field cleansing. If you don't have a ton of time, like you can start with these specific fields. What are the ones that sales needs to know? So those were all the basic information. You guys can download these slides and go look at them to perform these types of queries on your own. They're really, really easy. So that kind of stuff. And so like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but all of this querying, you need to make sure that whatever it is that you do is really specific to your own database and your own industry. So I put a bunch of stuff, a bunch of slides up here. Everything that I said may not work for you. It may not work for your buyer. The important thing is that you really need to understand your database. You need to understand what's valuable and what's not. And that's the real core of this mission, is figuring out, okay, who are the valuable people, who's taking up space. And you can sort of figure that out on your own, but hopefully some of those tips will help you get there. So then next up, cleaning house. This is the next level where you may have to work with someone who's either running your marketing automation or maybe they're your Salesforce admin. So we'll get into the specifics about each one of these. First, creating the CRM rules. So each one of those queries that I set up, if you guys figure out, we know email addresses that start with spam or email addresses that start with junk are fake. We don't want them coming in and getting routed over to sales. So you can set up rules based on specific fields that just get routed straight to a junk leads queue. Just put them straight into the garbage and then have somebody monitor that for a week or every week and sort of see what's coming in and determine, okay, is this capturing the right leads? Are the junk leads going in here? And then you just don't even have to worry about them. They don't make it over to sales, which is really helpful. Next up is doing stuff that's really behavior-based, like pulling people out that are behavior-based. So the way sometimes I look at this with marketing, especially with email marketing and marketing automation, is that all that query stuff, querying out junk, querying out people who are spam, that's stuff that you do before you even get to the starting line. So the race for marketing starts, you got to get to the starting line first, and then the race begins. All this stuff is like training and prep that you do to, get yourself in optimum shape before you even start the race. So I think that, this is really, really important. This is where you're really going to get to the meat of things. So you want to figure out who are your non-responders. If you start thinking about who are the people that I haven't sent to, they haven't opened, they haven't clicked, you need to figure out who these people are, because then you can get to things that are like, okay, better segmentation. If we haven't sent to these people within the last year, why is that? Are they not getting into our queries? Are they not getting into our programs? Let's really figure out what's going on there. If people aren't opening, then you need to determine why. Or do we need to do some sort of re-engagement campaign? What's going on? Let's get them to engage if they are the right people, but they're just not engaging. And then finally, if they're not clicking, you need to evaluate what are your call to actions. Like, let's see if there's some opportunities there to really figure out why people aren't clicking, why they aren't opening. And if you do all of these things, you figure this all out, and then you say, okay, they're still not responding, then you want to consider, taking them out, putting them in an archive file, putting them in an Excel spreadsheet and take them out of your database, because you don't want to message to people who aren't interested in your product, in your position. This is really important stuff. Next, so I say this reach everybody because it's a dangerous game. So we did this at Net Prospects when we realized, okay, we've got people in our system, we haven't messaged to them in a while. Let's send them an email. And the way we did that was we designed a holiday email. And it was a cartoon, it was a video, it said Happy Holidays from Net Prospects, and we sent it to absolutely everybody that was in our system. And it definitely was great because it took out, some hard bounces, people that we knew, the email addresses weren't there, but we had missed them in our queries. And it was just a really nice thing to do, like one time a year, say, yeah, we're going to message to everyone in our database and see what shakes down. So just kind of like Oprah here and her favorite things, everybody gets an email, you get an email, everyone gets an email. But just like Oprah's favorite things, it's not going to be, she wasn't giving away stuff that people didn't want. So don't send this message out to people if it's not going to be something that they're excited about. Or let's go with, at the very minimum, they will not be offended if you have sent it to the wrong person. So those were all the things that you can do working with, not all the things, but those are some nice, easy things that you can do working with your marketing automation provider or with your Salesforce database. And now we will get into some of the meat of things. Like, these are things that you can do with a vendor or you can work with your IT department. We'll just talk about going through your database, filling in the blanks, and then the ongoing plan. So if you wanted to give your database a grade, these are the areas that we did for the webinar, or for the benchmark report. So when we went out, that report that I talked about at the very beginning, these were the areas that we focused on. What were the duplications? What were, how many records did we have that were totally complete? Were the email addresses deliverable? And were the phones connectable? Did the phones actually match with who it is that they should? And there are tons of providers that are out there. We do it. There's tons of other people that do it. You can work with, internally to figure out if this is correct or not. But these are really 4 areas that are super, super important to be able to say, yep, we've got this on, we've got this down, we understand. If you don't know the answers to these questions, if you don't know where you stand with each of these sections, this is a great place to start focusing for your, for how you stand with your database health. If you're looking to get some more information on this, I really recommend going and downloading that benchmark report that we put out earlier, because I think that was a great place that explains the importance of each one of these sections and what you can sort of do to get started there. Next up, isolating your undeliverables. So whether you've got email deliverability problems or you've got phone connectability issues, this is something where you want to go with IT or go to your data vendor and say, okay, all right, I've cleaned out the basic junk stuff, but let's say I've got Bob at acme.com, and I think that he's really there, but that was 2 jobs ago, and Bob now works at Smith Company, and his email address, while it's still in our system, I have no way of figuring out if it's good or bad. That is something where a data vendor or your IT department hopefully can use some of their advanced tactics to help get you that information. Next up, filling in the blanks. So this is what Net Prospects, there's other data append companies out there. They can really help you fill out the picture of your contact record. So if you have things like, for us, we really like to know company revenue and industry, because for our lead routing, it helps us get the lead over to the right person to sales the first time. But we're all marketers, and we know that the longer the form and the more personal you get, the lower your conversion is going to be on that form. So that's not typically stuff that we like to do and we like to ask on our forms. So that's something where you can have companies just automatically give you that information, they append it, and then you get the fuller picture for lead routing, for for lead scoring. All of that stuff plays a huge role in being able to optimize your database. So then the ongoing maintenance plan. You do this stuff, you go through it all, but it's only valuable if you keep doing it. If you go through and you clean all this stuff out one time and then you don't address it again for another 2 years, well, you basically just wasted all your time, because it's not going to do anybody any good if you treat your database like it's static. Your database is dynamic, it's changing, it's moving, it's updating, and you have to make sure that it's something that you are constantly looking at. So I put a little calendar appointment up on the screen. I am going to give you guys 4 seconds to go ahead and open that up in your Outlook or whatever it is that you use and set this reminder. I already set the date. September 10th is 3 months from now, and you guys can go and make sure that you're doing this up in Q3. So that's all the main stuff. Like, that is the main topics that we're going to be covering today, to get you guys through things. But if you need more answers, you're looking for questions, this is a follow-up landing page where you guys can go, just ask for your email address, your title, and we'll give you some more tips, and we can engage with you guys in a different way, to provide you with the information that is everyone who's sitting here saying, I don't know, I need more answers, let's talk. We can definitely provide that and help you guys, with everything. So we went through and we did all of these things. I went through, I queried out our database, I tried to find all the junk folders, I paid attention to, who were we messaging to, who had, who didn't click in the last year, who hasn't clicked in the last, all those queries. And we had unbelievable results. We had a 22% increase in our open rates, because we were able to, one, reduce the amount of people that were clogging up our system, because if your database is smaller and you have more, more engagement, your open rates are going to go up. So if that's something that you need a quick fix, take all the junk people out so they're not ruining your percentages. We had a 10% increase in our deliverability right off the bat, and that was just with doing the quick junk searches that we figured out in the beginning. Like, those are the people that are really, really, really easy to get out of your system, and then don't waste those on your your deliverability reputation. The other thing that's really hard to quantify but has made a huge difference inside the Net Prospects organization and the overall sales and marketing relationship is, doing all this stuff and making data a priority, and me getting in there and saying, okay, I have to understand everything about our database. This made a big, big difference to sales. Because if they came down and said, hey, you guys used to send me all these junk leads that they weren't, every time a sales rep has to come down, down to your office and say, hey, you guys passed me all these junk leads, they say junk email address, why are you doing this? Like, your credibility with sales dies a little bit. So don't let that happen. And we put a big stop to it, and it's helped a ton, which meant people inside the company, they liked us a little bit more. They liked marketing, and they realized, okay, sales said they understand our priorities. They understand we don't have time to delete junk leads. And, obviously marketing is making this a big priority in the organization to serve sales. And that, goes a long way. The executives say, okay, this is great. We are really happy. Open rates are going up. Deliverability is going up. Okay, let's give you guys a little more money. That kind of stuff really, really does make a difference. So we went through all of that really, really fast. I think that there were some questions that were coming in, but hopefully you guys were able to get a nice, quick overview of some things that you can take away. Literally right now, you can close this webinar, you can do this search, you can go to your system and say, tell me how many email addresses I have that include the word fake, and you can do it right now. And if you do that, if you go through, you took my advice and you established your benchmarks first, and then you go out and you query out some of these people and you figure out, okay, who's not valuable, I'd love to hear about it. Like, I would love to know. Send me an email, send me a tweet. Let me know if this kind of stuff is valuable to you guys. And then if you find that there are other tips that you do, I'm in charge of this stuff too, so share it with me, because I'd love to be able to do that, for my own database. And hopefully we can just sort of establish an ongoing, relationship and share this information amongst each other. Because if this stuff is important to you, it's probably important to other people. Or if it's valuable to you, hopefully it's valuable to other people. So I think with that, we'll open it back up to DJ, and we'll just go through some of the questions.
Well, thanks again. And first of all, as I told you before we got started, I love that font. I guess that's like a handwritten font by somebody?
Yeah, it's called Hand of Sean. I don't know who Sean is, but I think he's pretty cool.
I thought Sean was somebody in your office.
No, that's anybody can go download that font, but okay. I totally think that font is Sean's probably cool, because that font is cool too.
I would actually almost say it's fresh and clean if I had to.
I think it's so fresh, so clean.
Well, I wanted to get in some questions, but first I really want to say I love how you ended. Well, the two things that really stuck out to me, I love the part about setting that calendar reminder. I think that's so important to, like you said, you kind of do it once and then you forget, and all of a sudden it's been 6 months and you have bad data again. So I love that idea, and hopefully people actually took you up on that and took the few minutes to do that. If not, you can also do that while we're asking the questions today. I also just want to say I love the where you ended with the improved lead routing to sales. I worked in sales for years, and I know that's huge. I mean, if you can keep the sales team happy, your job is significantly easier. So really a really good point there. So I want to just thank you again for all, kind of that look into the state of B2B data, how to keep your data fresh and clean. We're still taking questions, so if you have any other questions, now is the time to type those questions into the Q&A box. But let's start with the questions that have come in so far, and we'll go from there. So the first one is, what do you do if you don't have a map or a marketing automation platform? How can you do all this stuff that you just talked about?
Yeah, so if you're not using, so obviously you've got your data is somewhere. So even if it, in the most simple version, if you're keeping this inside an Excel spreadsheet or anywhere you've got it, typically you can download it. So you just want to download your database into an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can start doing searches there. So you can, you can do, manipulate your Excel spreadsheet to figure out and find all of this exact same, same information. And it's sort of just the same as you would do it outside of querying. You just would manipulate your spreadsheet in that way. It may be a little bit more annoying because Excel sometimes, depending on the size of your database, Excel might not be built to, to do that kind of querying that fast. But, it's definitely still doable. You can definitely still figure out all this information inside of Excel.
I mean, I'd sort of add to that too. I guess if you get too big for Excel, that's probably a good indication that you might need to invest the money into a marketing automation program, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's tons of companies that are out there, but if you find that it's getting too big, I mean, there's tons of different price points out there, and getting into the world of marketing automation is a wonderful, wonderful place to be. So I highly recommend it.
For sure. All right, great. So the next question is, you talked a lot about identifying the problem data, different ways to sort of do queries based on email address, or I like the Mickey Mouse and Batman and Robin and that sort of things too. But once you've identified the problem data, what is the best process to go about like cleaning all that data out?
Yeah, so let's say that you go in and you do this query and you find, okay, I've got 3,000 people whose, they've used Mickey Mouse as their first name. Then, you can set up a query to either pull that information out. Like you can say, I want to remove these people from my database. So each marketing automation platform is different. So you can either export those people and then do a purge inside your system. You can set an ongoing query to constantly be searching your database to say, hey, put these people into a list, and then that list just automatically gets removed from your database. It sort of depends on the system that you have, but all of the systems do that. So if you want to work with sales, you can say, like if you're working inside of Salesforce, you can say, all right, these are the people that we found. They're in this giant list. Now we want to do a purge of our database and get all of those people out. And one thing that I guess I would add to that is, I said this a little bit during the webinar, but really make sure that the people that you're removing are right. Like make sure that you are removing people who really, really are fake, or like they're people who just didn't want to give you their email address, but they're still the right people. I guess if that makes sense. It's something that you just have to get into and look at and pay close attention to.
Follow-ups, I think you started to touch on this, but I'm guessing part of this answer is going to be it depends. But some of this data cleanse, I mean, how much of this do marketing automation platforms do sort of automatically, or at least prompt you to do, and how many of them do you have to actually go in and set up queries like this? Is there anything that, any ways to, I guess sort of a little bit meta, but to have the marketing automation automate the cleanup process? Is that possible?
Yeah, so a lot of the marketing automation companies, for things like hard bounces, they will take those people out automatically. So some of them do it after the first hard bounce, some of them do it after 3 hard bounces. It depends on the system, but they'll go ahead and they'll take that kind of data out of the system. What happens though, what they don't do is like if you are using a marketing automation platform that is charging you for storage, they're not going to take those records out of your database because they're going to make money off of that. So if you have tons and tons of junk email addresses, they're still going to be in your database. Like they're just not going to get emailed. They're going to be moved to a suppression list. And actually, that's a really important distinction to make is I don't think that there's any marketing automation companies out there that remove people to your database. They just add them to a global suppression list. So that is something that's really important to distinguish and definitely to get the answer to. Is that, making sure like you understand those people are likely still in your database. They're just getting added to a suppression list, which is very different.
All right, perfect. I want to move to the next question that's a little bit different than this, but you talked a lot about the importance of, kind of led off the presentation talking about why this is so important, and the importance of having just clean, fresh and clean data. And so the question is, how does that data quality really impact someone's sender reputation? How does that impact whether or not an email is going to get delivered, let's say, to the inbox?
Yeah, so there's different degrees of this. So the first is, one, if you are mailing to somebody who does not exist and you don't understand that, I mean, the way that deliverability is figured out, I mean, DJ, you probably know more about this than I do, but the way that, getting into the inbox is so much more difficult these days because all of those systems that are analyzing whether or not you're a good sender or a bad sender, they are insanely sophisticated. We're in Boston now, so maybe I would say they're wicked sophisticated. And if you don't know the fact that you're sending to somebody who doesn't exist, that's something that's going to count against you. So whether or not it's an email address that never existed or it's an email address that has since been abandoned and has now become a spam trap, all that stuff can really, really hurt you. And it plays a huge role in deliverability. And I think the expectation is only going to increase as we go on and as these email ESPs, not ESPs, but as these, Yahoo and Gmail and these other business B2B addresses, like they're going to get more sophisticated, more intelligent, and it's going to be harder to get by with sending to the people that we know aren't there, that we know aren't engaging, with your brand.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and even the Gmail just came out with I don't know if they've got a name for it yet, but a new, they call it a new inbox, where your messages are automatically categorized based on whether they're a marketing message or promotion or something like that. So I agree. I mean, that sort of stuff it gets trickier when your messages are automatically getting filtered for you, and they might not even get to the inbox. So yeah, good quality data certainly impacts that. Speaking of that, somebody had a question about duplication and this idea that, so I guess the question directly is, what can I do with data that has the same name, same title, but for example, not the same company? How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, so that is a little, it's a little bit trickier. Like you could have John Smith, who is the marketing manager, and you could have John Smith, who's the marketing manager, but one works at IBM and one works at Oracle. And the answer to that is you need to match on more fields. You have to match on multiple fields in order for that to really be a true match. So, it's email address, if the email address is the same, or the city and state or the physical address match, those are the areas where you would just want to make sure that you have more than one field that are determining that this is a duplicate or this is not. And depending on the size of your database or the type of people that you are messaging to, it sort of depends on how sophisticated you want to go. But I would say at minimum, you want email address to match, and then that's how, those are easy. Those are the easy duplicates to figure out. And then understanding that John Smith at IBM and John Smith at IBM, well, that's a fairly logical conclusion that you can draw. But I would caution you when you're dealing with duplicates, because it really needs to make sense, for the rules that you're setting, because there's tons of possibilities that I know I haven't thought of before. That's I've merged duplicates, and then it sort of bit me to I've then had to go and undo that because it's someone with a common name, or I just made the assumption where I shouldn't have.
Especially if your name is John Smith, that's even more confusing.
Yeah, I don't know if I
Right.
would do dupe merging with someone named John Smith. That
Yeah.
that may be that's a dangerous one to
Yeah,
go
well, it's
to.
also, I think the other challenge of that too is that it's quite possible that I don't think you can ever get it entirely right because you're still, even though I'm DJ Waldo and that's a pretty uncommon name, it's, I might sign up with two different email accounts and with the same company, and it starts to get, it does get a little bit tricky when you cross over like that. So I have a very different question that came in, one that is sort of very unique to this. So I want to make sure I can ask this one. Somebody had asked if you have a degree or certification in marketing or communication, and if so, what advice would you give for which one that person should get?
So I do have a marketing degree. I was lucky. I figured out that I wanted to do marketing early in life. And so I went to school, had a marketing degree. Advice for marketing versus communications, I think that this is just going off of my own personal experience, is that I think the marketing degree is a little more specific. So if you want to get into the world of marketing and it's something you're interested in, then why not go ahead and go into the marketing, into the marketing world. If you're not sure, communications might expose you to overall skills that can help you no matter what area it is that you end up going into. As for getting into the world of email or into the world of marketing, I ended up coming up through email marketing. So I started out doing emails for companies using Constant Contact, and then I graduated to the more sophisticated marketing automation platforms, and then started figuring out buyer behavior and persona-based marketing. And the people that I learned that from, they did not go to school for marketing. She went to school for legal studies, I think was what she ended up going to school for. And I think there's a ton of different paths. And if you're looking for advice, figure out what it is that makes you smile during the day. What's the stuff that you end up Googling late at night? And if that's something that you can turn into a career, then, you know, then that's, really, really great. Like if you find yourself constantly researching one particular industry or one particular area, when you get home from work every day, that's something not to ignore.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I always think about communication, especially in today's world. Whether degree or not, you have to know how to communicate, and whether that means in the written form or the spoken form, it's I think it's becoming a little bit of a lost art. Uh, something I worry about with my kids at least. but
Yeah, it's
but anyways, all
really
right. So
true.
I'm going to go with the final question. This is kind of my one thing question, if you will. So the question is, my data is the opposite of quote unquote fresh and clean. So if you could give me one tip to help clean that up, clean up my data, what would that one tip be?
All right, so one tip to clean your data is my one tip is that you have to become BFF with your database. You have got to say, okay, I'm going to make this a priority and I'm going to look at it every single day. And by look at it every single day, I mean I'm going in and I'm looking at every single field. If somebody were to ask me what are all the fields that are in your database, you should be able to tell them. You should be able to tell them that in ABC order because you are so in that world every single day that it's like second nature and it's where you live. I think that overall, if you made that your goal, there's really no way that you could fail at this job because you and the database you're one. As cheesy as that
Oh,
sounds.
that is a quotable if I've ever heard one. You have to become BFFs with your database. I love it. Well, Lauren, thanks again for all of that wonderful information today. Hope everyone enjoyed today's seminar, which was, of course, sponsored by Net Prospects. We truly value your feedback. If you've ever been a part of a marketing props event at all, we take feedback very seriously. So if you could take a minute to fill out that quick survey that is listed here on this slide, we would appreciate it. Once again, my name is DJ Waldow, and thanks again to you, Lauren, and everyone for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. It was great talking with you guys.